We have lots to discuss in today's video, including lots of NHL trade talk around a variety of teams, including the Habs and Panthers, both having interest in the same centerman that they could both be targeting for later in the season acquisition. Plus, we have some rumors around the Oilers and another goaltending possibility for them to be looking to make changes here down the road. Plus, Carter Hart set to make his debut with Vegas here soon. Some other trade talk around the Canucks and the Bruins as well. Possibly the Bruins having interest in multiple Canuck players that might be available. We've got some big injury updates today around Adam Fox and Logan Cooley, and some other news from the waiver wire as well. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss in today's video. We'll start things off with some items from earlier in the day. There was a video out this afternoon regarding some of these other quick items, but we'll just quickly recap in case you missed that. But the waiver wire had some activity here today. We have the Minnesota Wild placing forward Tyler Pitlick on waivers. He has 435 games of NHL experience on his resume. He's appeared in 15 games this year, not registering any points for the Wild. So he will be available until the middle of tomorrow afternoon. We'll see what happens. He's 34 years old. Obviously not like a star player by any means that a lot of teams are going to be salivating over, but it could be a help to some teams' bottom six. Otherwise, he'll get reassigned to their AHL affiliate. We'll see tomorrow what happens with him. The more interesting player I think that was on waivers today is Flyers defenseman Adam Ginning, who's only 25. Now, this is a young player that's still hasn't found his way into becoming a regular with the Flyers after 3 to 4 years in North America, mostly playing in the American Hockey League. He's got 5 games with the Flyers this year. He's also appeared in 5 AHL games. He was a second-round pick in 2018, and he's basically played the equivalent of about 3 full seasons of AHL action, and he's got a grand total of 16 NHL games on his resume. So, again, not a very established player, but a player that's not has a lot of term or money, so that impacts a lot of teams' decisions when making waiver claims. But he's young enough that I wouldn't be shocked if a team is willing to take a flyer on this guy, pardon the pun, and give him an opportunity. So we'll find out tomorrow afternoon if Pitlick or Ginning is picked up or if they get reassigned to their respective AHL affiliates. Now on Saturday NHL action, there was a couple of big potential injuries, and 2 of them look like they may have, you could say maybe dodged a bullet, but one of them is still going to be a longer-term injury. Adam Fox of the New York Rangers is going to be out for a decent amount of time here. Of course, he was going back on the boards to get a puck, and he got absolutely crunched by lightning forward Brandon Hagel. Hagel came in, and of course, Fox kind of turned, so he was kind of to the side, goes in basically shoulder first into the boards. Clearly was in a lot of pain and discomfort, went off the ice, did not return. When you see something like that, I think Rangers fans and their coaching staff are probably fearing the worst, that it could be, a significant, multiple months. Sometimes you're probably even thinking maybe even season ending. You don't know. But it sounds like he is going to miss multiple weeks, but not be out super, super long. But for a Rangers team that's, not had the best start to the season, they're kind of like yin and yang here. Like they've got a great road record, horrible home record. And obviously not getting great performances out of all players. To lose a guy like Fox, who's offensively quite responsible for helping produce a lot of the offensive firepower from the back end, it's going to hurt for sure. But he was placed on long-term injury reserve, so he's going to miss a minimum of 28 days. But at the same time, the team's kind of calling it week to week, but it's probably going to be closer or slightly more than that 4-week mark is what things are expecting. So for him, I know he's obviously hoping to make the U.S. Olympic team that's going to go compete for a gold medal in Italy in February. It sounds like he should be recovered in plenty of time for that, considering we're approaching here the beginning of December. He's probably looking at early January return. That's the estimate right now. But, of course, it's very, very early. Sometimes these injuries can progress faster. Sometimes they can have setbacks. You just don't know. They can be tough to predict, and where they haven't given a more definitive timeline, that's kind of what the word is on him for today. But I think there was some fear that it could have been worse than that. So even though it's not great news, it could have been worse, I guess. In Logan Cooley's case with the Utah Mammoth, that was a scary situation where he took a knee-on-knee from Toropchenko, the Blues, and Toropchenko was given a major penalty and ejected from the game, which I do think was the right call. Watching the play, I've seen it a number of times, slowed it down, looked at all the angles. It happened. It was a bad situation for Cooley. I don't think there was intent from Toropchenko. It was just kind of bad timing, but at the end of the day, his knee is there. It stuck out. It gets Cooley pretty bad. He goes down in a heap of pain. Because I think the penalty was justified. I don't think supplemental discipline was justified either. So I think from all perspectives of that, I think they got everything correct. And I have no problem with the rest of it. Cooley, however, when he couldn't put any weight on his leg, had to get helped up off the ice. He was down for quite some time, having a crazy good season, turning into one of the best young players in the league, leading his team in many ways. To lose him for an extended time or for the rest of the year would be such a gut punch to a team who had a good start, but it's had a tough November. And, the team's already kind of reeling after the incredibly tragic news regarding the Keller family here just in the last couple of days as well. It just really would compound things. But obviously, Cooley sounds like he's dodged a bullet. It sounds like structurally the knee appears to be okay. So it doesn't sound like there's going to be too long of a term of an injury. It looks like they're referring to it as a quad contusion, so like a bad quad bruise, which is, I'm sure, still, a lot of discomfort and a bit of pain and whatnot. But it should be a much shorter term recovery than if he needed major knee surgery or something like that. So all in all, it could have been much worse, and it sounds like he's going to be able to come back sooner than later. But again, we don't have a definitive timeline. He still needed an MRI to kind of confirm all this, so it's not 100%. We'll probably learn more in that situation, I would suspect, within the next day or so. But Logan Cooley appears to be dodging a bullet and going to return faster than expected. A couple other roster move here updates, and then we'll get into some of the trade stuff. The Penguins returned Danton Heinen and Tristan Brose to the American Hockey League today. The New York Islanders also recalled forward Matt Gatcomb. Of course, with Palmieri gone for the season, Pajot's out. They're starting to add up the injuries here. So the Islanders are obviously giving their prospects and younger players a little bit more of an opportunity. The Ottawa Senators also got back Ridley Gregg today. He had missed, I think, 5 games, I believe it was, on the entire road trip up until today's game. They just got back Brady Tkachuk the game before. So they're starting to get healthier. Unfortunately, they're not playing any better. They got their... I don't want to best way to describe it, but they certainly got their butts handed to them tonight. 6-1 loss to the Dallas Stars. That road trip can't end soon enough. Now they make their way back to the East Coast, and they have a little stop close to home in Montreal, who are also just returning from a West Coast trip, and then they will go home for a few games and kind of get back on their own beds, which I think is, based on how they played the last couple of games, greatly needed. They've had a good season, but the last couple of games, not so well. Another trade front. Lots of names to look at here today. For one, I do wonder, we'll get into, actually, before we get into some of the Vegas stuff here, Carter Hart's being recalled. And of course, I know he's a controversial figure based on everything that he's been through, but he is going to get an NHL opportunity as early as Tuesday by the sounds of things. And I do wonder with Vegas, depending on how, they're probably not going to rush into anything, but there are other goalies like Akira Schmid, Carl Lindblom, they've actually kind of held them into this while their other guys have been out. And, Aiden Hill's been out for an extended time. Depending on how Carter Hart does, if they're happy with his play and he kind of solidifies that tandem, once Hill comes back, I wonder if one of these goalies could maybe be made available later in the year as well. Especially Schmid, because if they go with Hill and Hart, they could have a long-term tandem there that might block Schmid from really getting a long-term NHL look there. I think he's been fine for them and could be an upgrade for some other teams. So I just kind of wonder if that could lead to another goalie trade, but not right away. That would be something that'll come later in the year for sure. During Hart's time in the American Hockey League, he appeared in 3 games for Henderson in the American Hockey League. He had a record of 1-2, a 3.07 goals against, and an .839 save percentage. That, I don't need to tell you, those stats are pretty bad. So again, hard to say how things are going to go in the NHL. Clearly, Hart has a long NHL resume from before. And I don't know exactly how strong that Henderson team is either in front of them. That will play a role to some degree, but I think they're going to have to edge into this a little bit cautiously before they consider trading another goaltender for sure. But another goalie that is expected to get moved here sooner than later would be Broissoit, a current member of the Chicago Blackhawks who's missed well over a year. I think we're approaching about a year and a half of absenteeism here on long-term injury reserve, rehabbing from significant injuries. Broissoit's been through a lot, but he's got this year on his contract. Chicago has no plans for him. They've got their tandem set. The Blackhawks are doing surprisingly well. I'd expected them to be better this year, but not quite as good as they are. But Spencer Knight has really turned out to be a great acquisition for them and really solidified the goaltending position for sure. But Broissoit is looking for an opportunity to play. The Blackhawks are trying to accommodate. They've given his agent opportunities and permission to speak with other teams. Some talk from Elliotte Friedman wondering if he could be an option for Edmonton. We know Edmonton's exploring a lot of stuff and, trying to figure out a way to make that situation better. We know Stuart Skinner had a good game his last outing, getting a shutout, but is one game going to be enough to really change a long-term inconsistent narrative? I don't think it is, but at the same time, Chicago wouldn't need a goaltender coming back. So I don't know that Skinner absolutely gets traded in a goaltending move with the Oilers. I know Friedman's mentioned he wonders if it's time, just because of all the pressure and all the talk around him. Sometimes you just need to get out of Dodge and get a fresh start. And from Skinner's perspective, you got to wonder if it might be what's best for him, even if it might not be what's best for the Oilers. It's a tough. All the Canadian markets are tough to play in, especially when you don't perform. It goes both ways. I think the Canadian markets are great to play in when you're having success, and when you're struggling, it can be really bad because the fans do have really, really high expectations. They're incredibly passionate, and they want winning results. And we haven't had a cup winner in Canada in many, many, many years. And I think that, frustration level is growing, to put it lightly. So it can be tough. But at the same time, it can be great. It goes both ways, where some markets are just a little bit more even keel, steady all the time. So Edmonton, no different than the rest of the Canadian markets in that sense. But again, if they were to try to pick up a guy like Broissoit, the belief is the Blackhawks are only going to be looking for a draft pick. Probably not going to be an overly high one. I would say 4th, 5th round. It's not going to be anything high. Mid to late round pick to pick up this guy. Now he makes $3.3 million, so they're going to need Chicago to retain money. But I think the Blackhawks are prepared to do that. It's only the rest of the year, so it's not a long-term commitment or anything like that. If they come anywhere close to that 50% mark, you're only looking at, what does it work out to, 175, 18? It's going to be under $2 million, right? So, they get a $2 million goalie who can get you some wins. It's not horrible. Maybe they don't move Skinner. Maybe Skinner stays. Maybe they put Pickard on waivers, or they move him or something like that. I don't know. But there's other solutions and potential here at play. And Broissoit does have history with them. He's been a great backup at times with the Jets. He's played with Vegas. When he's played, he's been, generally speaking, he's been a good goalie for the most part. It's so hard to say what direction Edmonton goes in. Either way, if it's not Edmonton, they're trying hard to find him a home somewhere where he can play. And he is expected to be traded probably in the next week to 10 days. He's going down this week to the AHL on a conditioning stint, just like we saw recently with Carter Hart, and he will get some games in, and I suspect he'll get traded here in the very, very near future. So we don't know where he's going, but it could be one of the next deals we see here in the not-too-distant future. Now, RG.org and Jimmy Murphy reporting on some Bruins rumors that they do have interest in a couple of players with the Vancouver Canucks, and neither of these I find surprising at all. I can see them both being great fits in Boston. They're players I've mentioned just in my own opinion as I analyze these rumors, looking at players that we've talked about, these guys, Connor Garland and Kiefer Sherwood. I can see them both being Bruins. Connor Garland, for him, would be a homecoming. I think he'd be excited to play there if he was traded there. Sherwood, I think, makes a lot of sense for them. Like I said, the Bruins kind of loaded up on players in free agency and whatnot. They have a lot of bottom six guys. They don't have a lot of scoring, which is why the games they've lost, they've been able to produce. Pasternak has missed a few games, but they've done surprisingly well. But I will say this, they are tough to play against. But some of their tough guys to play against don't have a lot of skill, whereas Sherwood and Garland are also tough to play against, especially Sherwood, but it has a little bit higher offensive output. So, it makes total sense to me why they'd have interest there. Now, what the return could be, I don't know. It doesn't mean they're going to get both of them either. Sherwood's going to be tougher Well, in a sense, because it's going to be a big return. Like, the belief is from NHL insiders, they think the Canucks can and will hold out trying to get a first-round pick for Sherwood. Now, are the Bruins going to want to pony that up? Look what happened to them last year. They might want to be more cautious with some of their higher draft picks. Connor Garland comes with term. The belief is, according to Elliot Friedman, from the latest we heard from him on Garland, was that it doesn't sound like the Canucks are completely opposed to trading him, but they weren't actively out there looking for it either. As they said about the veterans being available, a lot of it was their guys on expiring deals. So Sherwood likely going to be the first to go. We've heard about Derek Forbort, some of the other like Bluger, those guys like that are going to probably your first to go. There's some speculation they'll move a goaltender, or maybe even both. Lankin and Demko's names have both been out there, so it's kind of difficult to say how this goes. So we don't know how deep and how far that's going to go right now for Vancouver. All eyes are, of course, on Quinn Hughes, which is a ways away from making that happen. And if it does happen, it's, could happen this year. Hard to say. But Garland and Sherwood definitely on the Bruins' radar, and both I feel would be a good fit and do make sense for that team. So we'll see. Now, another name we've been monitoring, and it's still unclear if he's going to be traded, is Nazem Kadri of the Calgary Flames. Of course, he still has some term on his contract. He's still playing well, into his early to mid-30s. Definitely a player that I think a lot of teams have interest in. The Flames are low in the standings. But we know that the desire from management and more so from ownership to move off some of their higher performing veterans like Kadri, Uyghur, etc., Huberdeau, is not real high. But the belief by some insiders is that there's going to be so much interest in Kadri, and that the offers are going to be looking too good that they might not be able to pass it up. They're going to have to approach him before the deadline and be like, okay, we've got a lot of really good offers here. Where would you be willing to go? And kind of talk through this. Now, Dave Pagnotta of the fourthbeer.com, of course, in one of his latest hits talking about Kadri, acknowledges again that we've heard Montreal's name as a interested party in his services. And that's been brought up numerous times. We've heard the Habs linked to a variety of centermen. As a number 2 center spot is definitely a hole in their lineup that they definitely would want to try to upgrade before we get too late in the season. And it's not going to be easy to do, of course, but they do have a lot of assets that will intrigue teams for sure. Kadri's an interesting name. Will he want to go there? That's what we don't know. But Pagnotta mentions another team to watch. He says is the Florida Panthers. Now, of course, we know the Panthers right now are without Barkov and Tkachuk. Tkachuk will be returning sometime. Hard to say exactly when. I'm going to say at the very earliest, probably late December. It could drag on into early part of January. You just never know. But he is coming back. We can probably say that pretty safely. Whereas Barkov, there's a pretty good chance he's not coming back for the regular season. And there's an even decent chance, too, that he is not available in the playoffs. Assuming, of course, they get there, because right now, with the way they've been playing, it's not a guarantee. That division in the Atlantic is pretty tight. It's pretty jumbled here. And they could get in. It'd be a little surprising by the end of it if they don't figure it out. But at this point, with where they're at and how tight everything is, it's far from a guarantee. But they will have big-time LTIR usage if Barkov doesn't come back that they can play with to add a big-time contract, and it would make a lot of sense that Kadri could be that guy. We know Kadri can play with an edge. We know Kadri can play the style that they like. He's got the experience. He's got a Stanley Cup. He would fit there incredibly well. Now, longer term, it might be problematic. Of course, we know there's going to be another rise in the cap, but can they afford to keep him beyond the current season? Because Barkov would be back next year for sure. That's going to be the complicated part. I'm not sure. Maybe they have to move another player. But to be honest, I think the Panthers, they're that kind of team that they just want to win, and they'll deal with the other stuff later. If they can make an acquisition like that and have a chance at a three-peat, they're not going to care. They'll figure out who gets cap dumped in the summertime and worry about it at that point. So, the Panthers reportedly a team to watch in the Kadri sweepstakes should he decide that he's willing to accept a trade and let the Flames move him. I mean, it's an interesting one to say the least. We know these two teams have significant history, of course, with the Tkachuk for Huberdeau Uyghur deal. It's not a lot of the same people involved. Obviously, Calgary has a new manager now. For the most part, for Florida, they've obviously still got the same group there. They've pulled Bennett out of Calgary. They pulled Tkachuk out of Calgary. Still got Bill Zito at the helm. Are they going to try to go for Kadri next? That sounds like it's a possibility. But Let me know what you think of that's a possibility that makes sense, what the asking price should be, and does it seem like a long-term fit as well, because it certainly would come with term on his contract. Let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We are really, really close to 40K now. We're only a couple shy as I recorded this video. So if you're watching these videos and you haven't yet subscribed, hit that subscribe button to help us out. Hit the milestone. I'd appreciate it very much, and I'll catch you next time.